Alright, so here we are, just painting in some sections. Now, before you saw how it had those artifacts and we had some bits showing through and didn't look nice. Later on in this tutorial series we actually go on and remedy that. The solution was to remove the brightness and contrast node, well normalize the brightness and contrast node I should say, as the values that are more than 1 and less than 0 cause a few issues. Alright, and you can do that with a ramp, by the way. You add in just a standard color ramp and that will normalize your values. Alright, so playing with a few different ideas here. Remember not to spend too long on the painting of these panels, as they will probably not be seen anyway. Or if they are seen, they're going to be seen flying off or damaged or something like that, so don't worry too much about it. Okay, so what I'm doing is just lining up my image here so that I can paint it on using those marks that we were discussing earlier. Alright, and once you finish each panel, make sure that you save all of the images. Otherwise, if Blender crashes, you'll lose all of your images, and that's not fun at all. Alright, so the same process on this one as well. Remember, you can feel free to put on some music or whatever you like, but if my voice is soothing enough for you, feel free to listen to me talk about this for the next 40 minutes or so. Alright, so there's going to be quite a bit of rust on some of these panels. Some will have more than others. It have some variation. If you have all of them the same rust level, it just looks like it's been built at the same time. Whereas what we want is a vehicle that's been built of several pieces. Alright, so just painting in some of that dirt there. saving out the images. Keep your images quite organized, make sure they're in the right folders. Later on in this tutorial, by the way, we do go in and we group up our segments there to make it a little cleaner, as our node graph is a little bit messy at the moment. But when you're just messing with shaders, it's not a major issue. So get a decent amount of rust in there. Rust is really going to make this seem believable. And also make sure that you don't make it look too polka dotty. I've seen quite a few projects where the patches of rust in paint are quite obviously circular or ovicular, and it looks painted. What you want to do is have it so that it doesn't look painted. It looks like it's naturally been broken up. And you get that by going over things quickly. Don't overthink things, just go for it. Once it's down, it's down. Don't worry about tweaking things to the extreme. It's just going to waste your time. Alright, now you might notice I've spent a little bit more time on the tray here than the rest of the vehicle, or the rest of these panels I should say, and that's because the tray will be seen. There is no panels covering that tray. There's a weapon, there's a big cannon covering the tray, but yeah, it will be seen, so it does need to look a bit better than the other ones. Well, they all need to look awesome, but this more so, it needs to look awesome. Alright, so bring back the other layers just so that we can see where the dirt will build up. Alright, so just making sure that we get those images saved. So it's a very straightforward process, just painting. Just time consuming is what it is. Alright, so make sure you get a decent amount of mud and dirt just on those guards, keeping them looking cool. There will be a lot of dirt that gets sort of sprayed up on the vehicle as well. I don't actually do it in this tutorial, but when you are doing your painting, make sure that you have mud splatters like going all over the side of the vehicle coming from the mud guards. That will also help build the realism. Something I forgot to do in the end. Oh. That's what you call a blender troll crash. It looks like it's going to crash and it actually doesn't. It's a good reminder to save though. Alright, see how these two objects join together? Make sure that the dirt blends together on the dirt on the panel that it's touching. Otherwise, you will notice a very distinct line where they come together. I chose to make these bits quite rusted. You can blend your textures in with the one behind it, which will look quite nice. I didn't do that, but would definitely look much better if you blend in these colours with the panel behind it. Make it look like one piece. But it's not overly necessary. It is behind a lot of stuff. So just working on the roof now. Okay, so you can see how I've got some more rust built up in the grooves there. That's sort of where the scratches would be. So, it'll be more sort of, where the water would build up, and that's where you get the rust. Sort of spreading out from there. Especially with that cannon above the roof, it would leak onto it, and sort of need to take all those things into account when texturing. You might also see that little black square that's stuck onto the roof. You can ignore those. They don't really show up at render time. It's just a bit of a bug in Blender where sometimes you get those. And they're quite annoying, but you can see them all over the mesh. It's just one of those things that are there. Alright, so make sure you get a decent amount of rust underneath the guards. That will, it's an area that would build up quite a bit. And don't worry too much about the inside, as they won't be seen. Well, it could be seen, but it's not going to be seen up close. Might also notice that I've got one panel is much cleaner than the other one. This is sort of going on the fact that that panel was being replaced recently. Alright, so just working on the hood now. Make sure you get those rusty patches or scratches in those grooves to make it look a little more realistic. And it makes it look a lot less procedurally generated as well. Alright, so I've gone back to the door now. I've seen that there's I haven't done anything inside them, and as we can see the inside of the door, when you're inside the vehicle, you will need to do that. Doesn't need to be much, just needs to be enough. Now this front panel here is just going to be rust and dirt. There's not going to be any paint on this. Likewise with the front grille. There's an awesome add-on, by the way, called Texture Paint Plus, developed by Bart Crouch, I believe is the name. I will show you that one there later on when we come out of time-lapse mode. But that's a very handy add-on, and you'll probably see me using it at some point. It allows you to paint much quicker, sort of like a bit of a Photoshop implementation into Blender, which is cool. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just saving out those textures and loading them into cycles. And shortly we will have a textured ute. And there we have it. So you need a few tweaks from there. Tweak the colours and all that kind of stuff. One thing that I want you guys to do is to have different colours on different parts of the car. So you can see there I've got yellow doors. I end up going for one blue door, one yellow door. Red doors, or the red items sort of clash with the rust, so I would recommend against that. But you might want to perhaps have different shades of blue. Something else. Yeah, just sort of mixing up the colours, make it look like it really is separate parts of vehicles that have been combined together. And what I'm doing here is I'm just writing down a quick note of which one's which will just help me to map them together later on. So we are just about halfway through this texture painting set, or this time-lapse section anyway. So you can see I'm setting up a different set of textures for the exterior panels. It is the same process, however we'll be using black panels. So we want this to be a black armoured vehicle, and yeah, it's gonna be covered in a lot of dirt. Alright, now notice how it's gone a little funny when we've gone into texture painted mode. That's just, don't panic when that happens. That's just how Blender works sometimes when you turn on your multi-resolution. It's yeah, you just got to turn it like on and off a couple of times and reselect your UV map, and then it will work. Now you want to make sure that they are not too circular, your dents in your mesh. My ones are a little too circular. I found that was something that I was commented on when I posted the final render online, was that the dents were a little too circular. So yeah, make them a little bit more interestingly shaped, and that would be cool. Now what I'm doing here is I'm using the rust. I'm using the rust by painting it on, and then I'm blurring it out. And by blurring it out, you get a sort of like the rust is just coming through kind of look. Right, so just mapping up those textures now. And with that one done, we can move on to the next ones. Alright, so same process again. Same thing that we did before the panels on the car, is just painting in scratches and rusts in the areas of wear and tear. Right, now I'm putting a little too much attention into the detail of this one. You can go over a bit quicker than this. Because bear in mind, we are covering this with dirt and dust later on anyway. Right, so once again, just blurring in the rust there. Making sure you've got some built up dust and dirt underneath the other panels. Alright, so we're getting through the panels now. It's a lot of panels to go, but yeah, texturing is a very, very tedious process. Takes quite a long time to do. As you can see, I think I spent about 7 hours. As you know, it might have been close to 8 hours texturing this vehicle. So it all depends on what you're texturing. If you are texturing something that's only got, a couple of panels, it's obviously not going to take you as long. Texturing something like this, where it's got tons and tons of panels, takes a little bit longer. And if you're doing a really fine detail item, you might find that that will take a really long time. Standard time, I think, for a project like this to be modelled and textured is usually about a month or two. Probably about a month, actually. You'd get a month to do a vehicle like this. So don't worry if you're spending, if you're spent an entire day texturing the vehicle and it's not quite how you want it. It's, yeah, it does take a really long time. So what I'm doing now is I'm messing around with the facing ratio pass to automate a procedural texture for the tyres. And in the end I just decided to texture paint it, or bake out an ambient occlusion mask actually. I think I used that, yes. Alright, so just messing around with hue and stuff. We'll mess around with this a little bit later, but yeah, for now it's just a matter of getting it looking roughly about right. Probably about a dirt colour. And there we go. So what I'm doing now is setting up a procedural shader for the rims, and we'll use that for a lot of the mechanics as well. And that's just a modified shader of one of the ones I showed you earlier. We'll go through it after the time lapse as well, but it's basically just using the Voronoi to mix together the rust and the metal. And then I just assign that shader on several objects. So going through the mechanics doesn't actually take too long. So we basically use a couple of procedural shaders over everything. So we'll be using a couple of variations of the rusted metal shader, as well as a rubber shader, a glossy shader for the suspension, and we also have a sort of like a reflective Fresnel ball for the what's called like the oily bits that are covered in oil have this sort of like a black colour that reflects some various colours, and I just used a simple shader for that one. So this is me playing with the oil shader. So yeah, there's a lot of playing and tweaking involved, just watching things move around. But as you can see, in the end, I've just decided to mix together a diffuse and a glossy. To get the desired result that I wanted. Which is just basically a glossy ball that has a bit of a diffuse bit to it. Alright, and just use a layer weight node to sort of get that fall off effect going. Make it look a little bit more oily and dirty without having to do much effort. Taking shortcuts is always a good thing to do. Sounds bad, but I mean, if you can take a shortcut and spend your time somewhere else, it's always a good thing. Alright, so just assigning a few procedural shaders. Now I used an emission on the lights, but we just end up creating glass shader. It's just sort of a temporary thing at this stage. And looking at your mesh in the rendered view, you can see what's been done and what hasn't. Okay, and that is our vehicle without any weaponry. Okay, so moving on to the weaponry. So we're taking a few shaders that we've already got, and we're just mixing them up a little, making it sort of like a gunmetal. We'll set up a couple of different rust shaders. Nothing overly complex. A lot of the complexities that you're seeing up in the node editor, they are sort of just presets, so from that collection. So you don't actually have to create all that. Remember, the resource files are available, so you can look through those and find out anything from there. Otherwise, I'm always available to answer questions. So mostly procedural for all of this stuff. It's just the barrel really that needs the texture. Whereas all these cables, wires, pipes, panels, they can all be just done with basic procedural shaders. Alright, I'm not a massive fan of how it looks at the moment, so I'm just going in and tweaking a few things. I've used X-ray view on that, by the way, to make it stick out so that we can see it. And I painted this one a couple of times. The first one I'm not particularly happy with. We go in a bit later and we sort of correct it and make it look more awesome. But that's all it is. It's just painting, tweaking, and tweaking your shaders and making sure everything looks exactly how you want it. In the end, what we do for the barrel is we blend together a procedural shader with painted shaders to get quite an interesting result. Now, procedural shaders will give you a lot of control, but can cause a few issues during animation if you don't do it correctly. So make sure that you've got your shadow mapped correctly to your UVs and not to your geometry. So if you have it mapped to your generated geometry, if you break something apart, it can cause your textures to shift, which doesn't look good at all. So just bear that in mind. And I gave it a little bit of a green paint job there, which I quite like. So we keep with that. Alright. So it's looking good.